I don't know about you guys, but for me, the best part about Football Manager is the Newgens. I mean, there's a lot of stuff to love about this game. Even though people pan the graphics, the in-game experience is actually really good. Sure, the training system is broken, but it still is a lot of fun to see these guys grow. Player interactions are no fun, but you can still get lost in the narrative if you let the game do the steering for you. But the best part of all comes on Youth Intake Day. But have you ever wondered how all of this works? Have you ever wondered why you get players from certain nationalities or where their names come from? Well, I have, and so I did a little bit of research to try to figure it out. Okay, we'll start with the easy stuff, how Youth Intake works. This is easy because of this excellent Reddit post from a little over a year ago which describes all of this in detail. Most of you guys know this screen, the Youth Intake preview screen. This is the screen that usually gets people really excited about what they think is coming. Anyway, this actually functions as an internal draft shared by all clubs in the same nation. The clubs draft players based on their youth recruitment ratings and club reputation ratings, and the reputation ratings is the tiebreaker. This is also where the names, positions, and nationalities of your players are created. Now, I believe you can influence the nationalities of your new players by having staff from different countries, but the easiest way to do that is to have an affiliate club from another country. This is especially helpful when you've got a well-established team and you're nearing the middle or the end part of your save. If you start racking up affiliate clubs like in Brazil or Argentina or someplace like that, you can start picking up crazy good wonder kids that come straight through to your youth intake. It's pretty cool. You'll get the youth intake announcement in March or April. Technically, you can reload your save to get a reroll if you want, though the results will usually be within the same range. The key here is your junior coaching rating, which is the first thing that you should prioritize for good youth intakes. The head of youth development is also important, obviously, but mostly for the influence he has on player personality. Hiring a head of youth development with a high professionalism level will make it more likely that you'll get young players with high levels of professionalism. There will always be exceptions, however. And professionalism is more important for young player development than anything else, and that includes stuff like consistency, hating big matches, and so on. Players with high levels of professionalism are much more likely to hit their potential ability. Players with low levels of professionalism might not fare so well. Now, you won't always have a great youth intake. This is why you should pay attention to the youth intake of other clubs, especially clubs in your country. So back in the good old days, you used to be able to poach off newly generated players from clubs all over the world. Starting in FM23, however, it's a lot harder to sign players under 18 years old from other countries. Back in Football Manager 2022, I used to have my scouts look at every single newly generated player. I would sign the players as soon as I saw a good personality, regardless of their potential ability. If they wound up being bad, I could still loan them out for a few seasons for a profit and then sell them in the end. You can still do stuff like that, but it's not as easy. Even still, I recommend scouting all newly generated players as soon as they show up. You can find them if you go to the menu and then to World. Look at the transfer screen. You can then look only at youth intake, and then you can have your scouts directly scout only these players. While you're here, you'll notice certain patterns. The youth intake for all teams in certain countries takes place on the same days. Anyway, the best part about doing this is that you'll know who the best players are as soon as they're created. You can keep them on your short list for the future if they don't want to sign today. But there's another question. How do the Newgens get their names, and is there any way to influence that? This is a question that has been discussed for a long time on a lot of Football Manager message boards. For a while, people speculated that there might be some sort of secret list of names for each language hidden somewhere in the game. But I've been through all sorts of lists in the game thanks to the resource archiver. I haven't found anything that looks like a names list. Now, I don't know for a fact how this works. I know that there are people who know much better than I do out there. However, based on what I've read, I'm pretty sure that names are determined by people in the database from those regions that speak those languages who have similar names. Let me show you what I mean. I got to thinking about this after messing around with the North American Football Association editor data file. Now, the immersion breaking thing about this file is that all the Newgens on my team have French names. That seems to be because the Rockies nation I'm playing in is actually a repurposed Caribbean island. I mean, the names are fine, sure, but these are not the sort of common names you would see in the suburbs of Salt Lake City. Now, I don't want to say anything bad about the creator of that file. Actually, I think he did a really good job on it and it's a lot of fun to play with. But if you look around, you can find examples of other files that have solved problems like this one. So check out this one. This is Yugoslavia Reborn, a project for FM24 that was first started in late December 2023. This was apparently based on another database that gave newly generated players regionally correct names as if the former Yugoslavia were still around. So let's look at a random team in the editor, GNK Dinamo Zagreb. Now I think that the key to this lies in the region that they're from. In this case, it's Veliki Zagreb. That region has been set up with 90 different cities. And over in the details page, you can see that it's set up with the language Hrvatski as well as the nation Hrvatska. So if I understand this right, the various republics of Yugoslavia are divided up by individual nations. And these would be individual nations with their own specific assigned languages. If my understanding is correct, the Newgens that are generated from these areas are assigned languages based on the language stats in the database. So let's say the game needs to make a new Croatian player listed in this mob as Hrvatska. It looks for players who speak Hrvatski as the default language or a mother language. That would be players like Andrej Kramaric. This name would be one of the names stuck in the system for random name generation. This seems to be consistent with things that I've read elsewhere, that the game uses the names in the massive database as a source for new names with that language. This Forbidden Names DBC document also apparently prevents certain names from being possible. I'm not sure if anybody's figured out what is in the file or how to change it, though people have certainly talked about it. And it looks like a language spoken and the language of the name is determined by the same thing that gives us the player nationality. Now this is probably something that could be tested more, but it's interesting to see at any rate. Now, the hard thing is figuring out how to correctly dish out languages to the right players in the database to get everything hooked together right. But it certainly is possible, and with a little bit of work, you could set up your own version of the world with your own language variants and whatever ideas you have. But like I said, it's not a huge problem that this winds up being wrong in some editor data files. It would take a lot of work and trial and error to get these problems fixed. However, it is interesting to know that the regional settings are so important, as well as how nationality is determined. And of course, the better the Newgen names are, the more immersive the game is. And you know, that's what it's all about in the end. It's all about making a realistic, believable, and immersive environment. I only wish that this stuff were better documented for those of us who want to mess around with it.